The sky above the resort was a tired blue. The kind that slips behind the hills quietly, like it knows it's overstayed its welcome. The scent of grilled fish and sunscreen hung in the air, drifting in from the beachside patio where my family always had dinner on the first night. I'd flown in early, booked the rooms myself, confirmed the menu with the chef, and made sure the terrace heater was working. The usual. I walked across the courtyard past the koi pond, a wine bottle swinging lightly from my fingers. The same one Mom liked. The same one I bought every year, like clockwork. They were already seated when I arrived. My mother waved vaguely while scrolling through her phone. My father was gesturing at the waiter, apparently annoyed the bread hadn't come yet. My younger sister, Heather, had already tucked a napkin into her blouse and was halfway through her first glass of wine. I pulled out the empty chair next to my brother, Jacob. "You're late," he said. I glanced at my watch. "By 4 minutes." "Classic Liv," Heather chimed in, too busy fixing everything to just sit down. No one laughed, not because it wasn't funny but because it didn't need to be. That kind of jab had become wallpaper in my family, familiar, casual, inevitable. I poured myself water and asked the waiter for a plate. He looked confused. "Are you not eating from the family set?" "I didn't order that," I said. "You're not on the guest count for dinner," he said, trying not to sound accusing. My mother didn't look up from her phone. "Oh, you weren't? I thought you'd already eaten. You usually do." Heather smirked. "I told you she'd be too busy organizing or cleaning or doing Olivia things." The table chuckled, and then my father said it, offhand like a reflex. "She's basically the maid of the family." A few things happened in that moment. Heather giggled into her napkin. Jacob choked on a breadstick and didn't apologize. My mother didn't even pause her scrolling. And I froze. Just for a beat. It wasn't the word, I'd been called worse. It was the fact that it had slipped out so easily, so reflexively, like it wasn't even meant to hurt, because they didn't think it would, because it had never occurred to them that I might be listening. I looked at the wine bottle I had brought. My mother's favorite. Not a single thank you. It sat unopened in the middle of the table. "I'll grab a plate from the bar," I said, quietly. "Oh, Liv, don't be dramatic," my mother said without looking up. I stood anyway, walked inside. The bar manager, Leo, recognized me. "Miss Hart, you're back," I nodded. "Looks like it." He handed me a clean plate. "You need a separate table?" I smiled. "Not tonight." He hesitated, then added, "Mr. Parsons says he's thinking about selling. If he does, I hope the new owners are half as thorough as you." That made me pause. "He's serious?" "More than before. Says he wants someone who knows this place, someone who cares." I nodded, slowly. Filed it away. I ate alone that night, at the bar. No one came looking for me. When I got back to my room, my separate room, the one I'd booked so I wouldn't have to share with Heather and her drama, I set the wine bottle on the nightstand next to the resort keycard. A small white card with a blue stripe across the top. The kind they hand to every guest. I stared at it for a long time, that cheap piece of plastic. So nondescript, so temporary, so transactional. I ran my thumb along the edge and thought, what if this key didn't expire? What if it belonged to me? And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to imagine what it would feel like to walk into a space with my family and not be expected to serve. To not be a guest, to not be the maid, but to be the owner. My name is Olivia Hart. I'm 36 years old, Regional Director of Guest Experience for a chain of boutique hotels across the West Coast. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in San Diego, though most of my life is spent in boardrooms, on flights, or walking properties under renovation. I eat meals standing, sleep with one eye on my inbox, and carry an old, battered leather notebook everywhere, my one consistent possession since college. Inside it, I keep notes on everyone, even my family. Especially my family. Growing up, I wasn't the oldest, but I was the most available. Heather was the pretty one, born 6 years after me, with a fragile sense of entitlement my mother wrapped in cotton. Jacob was the only boy, which somehow earned him a lifetime exemption from consequences. I was just Olivia. Reliable, efficient, not dazzling, not helpless, not someone who ever needed much, which in my family meant I was the one who gave. Every Christmas, I wrapped everyone's presents, including the ones my parents were giving to each other. Every Thanksgiving, I was the one setting timers on the turkey, doing a last-minute run to the store, checking whether the vegetarian cousin was still vegetarian this year. My siblings sat, laughed, lived. I moved around them like a ghost with a planner. It started young. I remember being 10 years old, balancing the checkbook for my mom while she supervised from the couch. I didn't question it. Praise was scarce and efficiency was rewarded. Once, when I was 14, Jacob asked me to type his college application essay. He hadn't written a word yet. He lay on the couch with a baseball game on mute while dictating thoughts to me between mouthfuls of cereal. I typed every word. He got accepted. At dinner, he told our parents, "We did it." No one asked what we meant. I did the work. He got the congratulations. That became our rhythm. When I was 21, my parents let me use my student loan refund to pay for Heather's orthodontics consultation. "You'll pay it off in time," Mom had said. "She only has one prom, Liv." I never saw the money again. And when I landed my first job as a front desk supervisor at a modest hotel chain in Seattle, they didn't ask how I was settling in. They asked if I could book a discounted room for their anniversary trip. I did. Of course I did. That year, I gave Heather a cashmere scarf she didn't like the color of and brought my own groceries to the family vacation so I wouldn't be a burden. They still made jokes. My mother once called me the family's operations manager. She meant it as a compliment, I think. My father called me Miss Clipboard. Heather called me the help once at a brunch, laughing into her mimosa. Jacob said nothing. He never did. I learned to dress for usefulness. Neutral slacks, wrinkle-free tops, shoes you could run in but still looked polished. When I brought a boyfriend home one year, Ben, an accountant with a shy smile and a talent for cooking, he spent the whole weekend asking me why I wouldn't sit down. "Because no one else will do the dishes." I said. "So let them pile up," he'd replied. "You don't know how this works." We broke up a few months later. He said I didn't make space for anyone to help me. I wanted to scream, "You don't know what happens when I stop." But I didn't. Because he was right too. By then, I had been trained to anticipate every need. And when you're always the first to volunteer, no one ever thinks to ask if you're tired. I grew into someone who made things happen, for everyone but myself, until I stopped. 3 years ago, I began investing on the side, quietly, methodically. Tiny shares in underperforming properties, anonymous contributions to startup retreats, test-run equity in a wellness spa that eventually flopped. I lost some, gained some. Kept my name off everything. Not because I was ashamed, because I didn't want my family knowing I had options. Because they would find a way to spend it. That's how I met Denise, a retired hospitality lawyer who'd once represented the founders of a desert resort chain. She now did consulting for women entering property ownership. "You're more than qualified," she said. "You've been running circles around these men for a decade. Why haven't you bought your own place?" I didn't answer. But I thought about it. Every time my family needed something. Every time they texted, "Quick favor," or "You good to book dinner for us?" Or, "Bring your laptop in case the Wi-Fi sucks." I'd stare at my phone and think, why am I still the maid in a family I built vacations for? So when Leo, the resort's bar manager, told me Mr. Parsons was thinking of selling, something clicked into place. The old man had run the resort since I was 13. I'd seen him every year like clockwork, always in his linen shirts and boat shoes, always pretending not to notice the tension at our table. But 3 years ago, he and I had a long conversation on the dock while my parents bickered about sunscreen. He told me, "Your family doesn't know what they have in you, but I see it. You understand flow. You see gaps." He paused. "You could own a place like this." I smiled politely. Now, I wasn't smiling. I texted him that night from my room. "Mr. Parsons, heard you might be considering a sale. I'd like to talk." He responded in less than 20 minutes. "Let's meet, tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. on the dock." That night, I took the old resort keycard from the nightstand and slipped it into the leather sleeve of my notebook, the one that had tracked my whole life of service. Now, possibly, opening a door for me instead. Mr. Parsons was already there when I arrived at the dock. The sun wasn't fully up yet, but the morning light glinted off the lake like a warning. He was leaning on the wooden railing, wearing his usual crisp button-down and khaki shorts, sipping from the same thermos I'd seen him carry since I was a teenager. "You're punctual," he said without turning. "You're consistent," I replied. He chuckled softly and then looked at me, really looked. His eyes were steady, like he'd been waiting for me to catch up with myself. "So," he said, "you want to buy the place?" I nodded. He raised an eyebrow. "No hesitation?" "I've been hesitating my whole life," I said. "I'm done with that." We sat on the bench beside the dock, a place where I had once read books alone while my siblings did cannonballs off the edge. I watched them then with envy. Now I watched the water. "I don't want to turn this place into some trendy Instagram shell," I said. "I want it to stay what it is, just better managed, more equitable, and I want my name on it." Parsons sipped his coffee. "You know, most people who approach me want to strip it, flip it, or rebrand it with fake bamboo and overpriced candles. I want to replace the mattresses, not the soul." He liked that. I could see it. "And you've got funding?" "I've got more than funding," I said, sliding him a folder from my notebook. I have a plan, a full remodel schedule, staffing blueprint, vendor audit, and 5-year projection. Also, letters of interest from 3 previous investors I've worked with, ready to commit if you agree. He flipped through it, nodding slowly. You've been preparing, he said. For years, I replied. There was a long silence. Then he closed the folder and said, all right, let's talk numbers. It took 2 months to close the deal. I didn't tell my family. I didn't tell anyone. I used a holding company, a private LLC with a gender-neutral name. I did everything discreetly, quietly, legally. Denise helped. I signed every document with hands that had once changed pillowcases for other people's comfort and now held the deed to 28 acres of coastal property. The resort officially transferred ownership to me on a Thursday afternoon in early spring. Mr. Parsons called to congratulate me and said he'd left something in the front office for when I visited next. When I arrived a week later for a walkthrough, Leo handed me a small envelope with my name in Mr. Parsons' neat cursive. Inside was the original metal room key from the very first time my family stayed at the resort, room 104, the tiny corner unit near the laundry shed. I hadn't seen one like it in years. They'd moved to cards in the late 2000s. Attached was a note, even maids can own castles, make it yours, P. I carried that key in my pocket for weeks, touched it before every meeting with vendors, consultants, and future staff. It was more than a keepsake, it was proof. I made small changes first, replaced threadbare linens, hired a new head of housekeeping with full benefits, gave every returning staff member a retention bonus and a say in their new roles. I updated the menus, installed proper shade canopies on the patio, and fixed the hot water in the old units, the very issue my family complained about every year but never offered to help with. And then I waited. Because I knew. Every July, like clockwork, my parents booked the same rooms at the same time for the same restorative week of family bonding. My mother called it our reset. I called it a performance I'm no longer in. This time, I didn't hear from them in advance. No calls, no texts. I let Leo handle their reservation. I made sure the front desk treated them just like any other guest. No discounts, no favors. I reviewed the welcome packets personally, and on the morning they arrived, I watched from the staff lounge through the monitor feed as my father huffed about check-in times, my mother demanded upgraded towels, and Heather complained the room didn't smell spa-like. They didn't know I was watching. That afternoon, I took a walk around the property. The place looked sharper, calmer. The staff moved with more confidence. They knew who owned it now. They knew the story, or enough of it. They knew what I expected: fairness, kindness, excellence. I passed by room 208 where my parents stayed every year. The door was propped open while housekeeping freshened the space. Heather stepped out in a sarong and saw me. Her eyes narrowed. Olivia? Hi. What are you doing here? Just walking through. Are you vacationing too? Not exactly. She tilted her head. Weird seeing you here outside of check-in day? Don't you usually come early and set up all the rooms? That tone, that smirk, it had returned like muscle memory. I smiled. Not this time. She shrugged and turned away. Anyway, Mom was saying the food's gone downhill. You should tell someone. I nodded. Maybe I will. That night, I dined alone at the staff table near the kitchen. The chef sent out a new dish we'd been experimenting with. It was good, simple, honest. Leo joined me after his shift. They've been complaining since check-in, he said, half amused. Let them, I replied. They think you're just visiting. I took a sip of wine. Not for long, he grinned. You want me to put something on the bulletin tomorrow? Owner's address? I thought about it. Then I said, yes, but not just a bulletin. The next morning, every room received a printed letter slipped under the door. Resort logo at the top. A note from the new owner. No name, just a signature. O. Hart, Managing Director. The letter thanked them for returning, explained the renovations, introduced the new employee profit-sharing model, and invited all guests to attend the upcoming staff recognition brunch in the garden courtyard, hosted personally by the new ownership. Mandatory for guests, especially those with complaints. My mother read hers out loud at breakfast. I'm sorry, she told Leo at the desk, but this brunch thing says mandatory? Yes, ma'am. And who is this O. Hart? Leo smiled. You'll meet her tomorrow. The morning of the brunch arrived hot and bright. The courtyard had been dressed simply. White linens, fresh-cut flowers, chairs set in a U shape around a podium I almost didn't stand behind. I had debated whether to let someone else speak on my behalf, to maintain the mystery. But the part of me that used to sit quietly at family dinners, clearing dishes before dessert, needed to be the one to say it. The part that had been called the Maid. Guests filed in slowly, sipping mimosas. The mood was pleasant, curious. Resort staff were seated at the front, faces alert but relaxed. The This was the first time they'd all be addressed publicly by ownership under the new model. Behind them, the vacationers fanned themselves and murmured. My family, my mother, father, Heather, and Jacob, sat together on the left side, facing the podium. I noticed they were already sweating. I stepped up to the mic. Good morning, I began. The crowd quieted. A few staff members smiled at me in recognition. Others watched with curiosity. But my family, they stared like I had walked out of a painting they didn't remember commissioning. My name is Olivia Hart. I'm the new managing director and majority owner of this property. Gasps, murmurs, the sound of a fork clattering. I kept going. Many of you have visited this resort for years. Some of you are here for the first time. Regardless, you've probably noticed changes. Renovated rooms, upgraded amenities, a renewed sense of care in how we run things. I paused. That's because we've made this place more than a business. We've made it fair. I turned slightly, gesturing to the staff seated in front. Every single person working here today has a profit share in this property. They are not replaceable. They are not the help. They are the reason you get to relax, and they will be recognized as such. There was a beat of applause, not forced. Real. I finished with, thank you for being part of this new chapter. Now, please join us in celebrating the people who make this place what it is. The music started. Food was served. I stepped down from the podium and walked straight past my family's table without stopping. Heather looked like she was about to choke on her mimosa. My father's mouth hung open. My mother blinked rapidly, trying to piece together how this had happened without her involvement. Jacob stood, caught up to me near the edge of the buffet line. Liv, wait, he said. You own this place? I nodded. He exhaled sharply. How? When? While you were forwarding me hotel links and asking if I could book the good rooms, I was buying the building, I said, not smiling. He winced. You could have said something. And what would you have said? I asked, turning toward him. Would you have congratulated me or asked if you could get a discount? He didn't answer. My mother came next. She approached like someone entering a chapel she didn't believe in. Olivia? Her voice was light, disbelieving. This is impressive. I tilted my head. That's a new word. She gave a nervous smile. Why didn't you tell us? I folded my arms. You once asked me to clean the bathrooms before your anniversary dinner. When I said I was exhausted from work, you called me selfish. You said this family always makes room for each other. She flinched. I decided to make room for myself instead, I said. Her eyes flicked toward the staff, toward the watching guests. We were joking, Olivia. You were training me, I corrected, to accept less. And I did. Until now. She didn't speak for a long moment. Then she said, well, it's beautiful, truly. Thank you, I said. Heather didn't speak to me at all that day. She just stared from across the garden, her napkin balled in her fist, unsure whether to storm out or apologize. Jacob eventually returned to his seat. My father stayed seated the entire time, rigid, pretending to be unmoved, but I saw the way his hand trembled slightly as he reached for his water glass. Later that evening, after the brunch ended and guests had dispersed, I returned to the main building. Staff were cleaning up. Leo gave me a small nod as he wiped down the bar. Went better than expected, he said. I smiled. They were stunned. That was the point. He set down the rag. Think they'll come back next year? I thought for a moment. Maybe. But they'll call ahead this time. He raised an eyebrow. To book? No, I said, slipping the original metal key, room 104, into my palm from my pocket. To ask permission. He laughed softly and returned to his work. Later that night, I took the elevator to the top floor suite, the one I had renovated myself, designed with wide bay windows and minimalist wood paneling. The one no guest could ever book online. The one labeled only in the staff system as O1. The owner's suite. I sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, and looked out at the dark coastline. Below, the faint sound of music from the patio echoed, and I imagined my mother saying to my father, "Did you know she was this serious?" And him replying, "She was always serious. I just thought she'd outgrow it. And now, they'd have to live with it." 3 days after the brunch, my father knocked on the door to the owner's suite. I had been reviewing next quarter's staffing schedule, curled up on the couch in joggers and a linen tee, sipping black coffee from a chipped blue mug I found in the resort's lost and found years ago. It had a hairline crack and a faded sailboat decal, but it felt like mine. Like something forgotten, quietly functional, still holding warmth. I never replaced it. The knock came twice. Not loud. Measured, the way someone knocks when they know they're entering a space they once assumed was theirs, and now isn't. I opened the door. He stood there in slacks and a tucked polo, sunglasses looped onto his collar like he still needed to remind the world he was the kind of man who vacations regularly. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped back. "Sure." He entered slowly, eyes scanning the space. "Nice view," he said. "I designed it," I replied. He turned toward me. "You always did have taste. I remember your dorm room had curtains. Who brings curtains to college?" "Someone who knew no one else would think to." He nodded, lips pressed together. "Olivia," he said finally, sitting on the arm of the chair like he wasn't sure how permanent he could be in this room. I wanted to say, "I didn't see this coming." "No one did," I said, "but maybe we should have." He rubbed his hands together. "You were always the one holding everything together, but I think we got used to thinking of that as convenience." I waited. "And when people are convenient," he said, "you start to forget they're people." I didn't soften. "You all thought I was a helper, not a person." He looked up at me, eyes damp. "We thought you were fine, that you didn't need what we gave the others." "That's the lie you told yourselves to sleep well," I said quietly. "You gave Heather praise, Jacob trust, and me responsibility. But you only thanked the first two." He nodded. "I didn't know," he said. "You didn't ask." There was a long silence. "Then, your mother, she's rattled." "She'll recover." He smiled faintly. "You've got your mother's sharpness, you know." "No," I said. "I have her standards, but I hold myself to them." He laughed once, a soft exhale. "Fair." Then he stood. He reached into his pocket, pulled out something small, and set it on the counter near my coffee mug. A matchbox. The old kind, cardboard printed with the original resort logo from the 80s. The kind we used to keep in drawers back home when I was little, before my parents upgraded everything and said they were too cheap looking to display. "I kept that," he said. "From the first year we came here. Room 104. You were 13. You made us pancakes with hotel sugar packets because the grocery store was closed." I picked it up. Faintly smelled like old wood smoke. "I remember," I said. He looked around again, slower this time. "This place feels like you," he said. "Not the branding, the feel. There's control here, but no tension. Like it finally exhaled." I said nothing. He nodded, made for the door. Before stepping out, he paused. "Would you consider coming home for the holidays this year?" I tilted my head. "Why?" He blinked. "Because we'd like you there." "Because you need a planner, or because you want a daughter?" He winced. "Because we miss you, and because we're learning." Slowly. I let the silence fill the space. Then I said, "If I come as a guest." He smiled. "That's fair." After he left, I stared at the matchbox. I placed it beside the mug. The two looked oddly right together. Objects no one else would notice, symbols of years spent unseen, finally allowed to sit still. Later that afternoon, Heather found me on the back deck near the pool. She approached cautiously, like someone circling a dog that had once bitten her. "You made quite a show," she said. I didn't look at her. "I made a business decision." "I didn't mean to treat you like—" "You did," I interrupted. "You meant it, you believed it, and I let you. That's on both of us." She crossed her arms. "You know I'm not good at this." "No," I said. "You're just not used to needing anything from me." She sighed. "Okay. That's fair." Another pause. Then, "Mom wants to apologize but doesn't know how." "Tell her I'm not interested in choreographed apologies." She's serious this time. "Then she'll show it, over time, not in one brunch." Heather shifted. "We're staying 2 more days. We'd like you to eat with us. No planning, no favors. Just sit." I raised an eyebrow. "Just sit?" She nodded. "Bring that weird mug if you want." I smirked despite myself. "It's not weird, it's seasoned." She smiled. "You're really not coming home, are you?" "I am home." That night I ate with them. No one asked me to refill the water, call the front desk, or rearrange anything. They even waited for me before ordering. When the waiter asked who was handling the check, my father pointed at me reflexively, then stopped and said, "Actually, we'll split it." Progress. After dinner, I walked back to my suite, matchbox in one hand, keycard in the other, not to open someone else's door, but to lock mine. My name was on the deed. My voice had been heard. My seat at the table no longer came with conditions.